Hello and welcome to the heliosblog. My name is Helios. Today we're going to talk about how you should ask the fisherman and not the fish. This is a great topic. Too many men screw up with women because they ask the wrong person for advice. It's very important to ask for advice from the right people, lest they steer you in the wrong direction. Let's get into it, shall we? Enjoying my content? Check out my blog at heliosblog.com. On YouTube, you can support me by liking and subscribing. I'm also on Spotify if you'd prefer a podcast. If you're interested in my books, The Strategist Guide to Seduction and Quotes to Live By, they're available on Amazon. In addition, you can follow me on Patreon at theheliosblog for exclusive content. On with the show. The fisherman knows, not the fish. Do you think fish have any idea how fishing works? They simply get taken up by the nets or are lured by the hook of the fisherman. They have no idea the mechanics behind the fishing trawler or the fishing rod. Would it be wise to ask the fish how they're caught? They would tell you that getting fished just happens. Or they might tell you that when the right fisherman comes along in the right place, fish get magically pulled into the boat. Listening to that advice might imply that no effort at all is required in order to fish. Asking the fisherman may yield different results. You'll find that he knows many things about fishing, from water currents, to where fish like to reside, to what kind of bait works for which fish, and even which net is best to use. Talking to a fisherman, you would understand the underlying mechanics behind fishing. You'd realize that not only is it hard, but that a lot of effort goes into fishing properly. You have clearly asked the right person for advice in that case. The people men normally ask for advice. Men normally ask women for advice on how to seduce women. Nothing could be more idiotic. Every woman has a different opinion on how women are to be seduced, and none of them understand how it's really done. At best, women will steer you in a neutral direction. At worst, they'll steer you completely wrong. Women give advice on how they would like to be seduced. What they would like to happen is very different from what actually happens. As a result, many women end up telling men advice that leads them to become better beta slaves. This, of course, works in women's favor, as a man asking for advice on how to seduce women clearly doesn't get it, and so does not deserve sexual access anyway. In asking for advice from a woman, he's disqualified himself sexually from that woman and all her friends. In effect, he's told her hypergamy everything it needs to hear. I'm unworthy of sex and am a slave. Please advise me on how best to serve you. Asking women for advice will not help you seduce women. It can only hurt you. Instead, ask the fisherman. Ask the men that are good at seducing women how it's done. Who men should be asking for advice? Men should be asking seducers for advice on how women should be seduced. They should not ask women or beta NPC slave men. Everyone in those categories has no clue how it's done. All their advice will therefore steer you in a terrible direction. Unless you want to be an NPC, take all advice from women and NPCs on how to seduce women with a grain of salt. Seducers know exactly what needs to be done and how. They understand the current social climate and how women differ by age. They understand exactly how you're supposed to look, act, and think in order to seduce women. They are amazing as a source of advice. If you happen to have any man in your social circle who's amazing with women, you should definitely be asking him for advice on how women are to be seduced. Anything you can glean from him will be gold. Watch his mannerisms and how he treats the women around. Watch how they react, learn, and emulate. He is an excellent fisherman. Learn how to fish from him. Stupid advice given on purpose. Women tend to give bad advice on purpose in order to serve the feminine primary social order. They only know how to give that kind of advice as they've grown up that way. Women give men advice on the assumption that those men are slaves. Only when the contrary is provided do women admit to what they truly want. If you're constantly listening to advice given to you by women about what women want, you're 100% going to have mostly beta behaviors. As a result, you'll be totally anti-seductive to the women around you. You will then wonder what you're doing wrong to repulse the women around you. Your problem? You're listening to them. You're failing the shit test by listening, and you didn't even know it was one. Why stupid advice is given? Women do not communicate overtly, they communicate covertly. This means that the medium is the message. You're sub-communicating to her by asking for her advice that you have no idea what you're doing. As a result, you've just signaled that you're an NPC to her. You then receive the culturally appropriate advice to give to an NPC, which is engineered to keep you as an NPC to continue to fuel the feminine primary social order. When women volunteer advice to you about what women want, smile, nod, and ignore it. She has no idea what she's telling you is garbage, and she'll be offended if you point it out to her. Women's advice is for Team Woman and for the natural selection of the human race. Women's advice is not for you. Who you should model yourself on. You should try to emulate the behaviors of the men around you who can actually seduce women. If they're able to do it, they're clearly doing something right. If you see a guy and all he's ever had are monogamous relationships that went disastrously wrong, do you really want to model yourself after him? If he's a miserable beta slave in a marriage, do you really want to model yourself after him? How about if he has multiple friends with benefits and he always seems happy and in control? How about if he has multiple attractive women that seem to want to fuck him? Of course that's the guy to emulate. Talk to the damn guy. Learn all you can. He's likely lonely and living an existence where he has actively had to ignore the bullshit that people around him have tried to feed him his whole life. He will love to have someone to talk to who gets that the world is stupefying people on purpose. Use the scientific method. Rather than immediately agree with things you're told, be a skeptic. Don't trust what people tell you, verify. Read my stuff and test it out. If it doesn't work, dump it. Use what works and drop what doesn't. Do the same for the advice that women and your family have given you. If it doesn't work, don't be angry at them, just ignore it. It's very important to experiment so that you can get the best results out of your life. Just because the social convention says you should do something doesn't mean you should follow it to the letter. Search your feelings, you know it to be true. On some deep level, you know it to be true that women are obviously not the best people to be asked for advice. Obviously they don't know how they should be seduced. If they did, most would not end up in miserable long-term relationships. Learn from the people that are actually able to get the results that you want. Listen to the experts. Use the scientific method and don't trust everything you hear. I'm sure your gut was screaming at you constantly before you found a red pill source that something was wrong in your understanding of the world. Obviously, women are not attracted to what you thought they were attracted to. Luckily, the internet has lots of information to help you. It was not always this way. Conclusion. Most men fail before they even begin because they have no idea who they should be asking for advice. They ask all the wrong people how they should go about seducing women. Their friends, their family, women. They fail to notice that the advice given by these people never works. They are not experts in seduction, and if they were, would not be in the miserable situation they find themselves. You need to ask the right people for advice, or you'll be led astray. Ask the fisherman how fish are to be caught, and not the fish. Good luck.